There's quite a few options on here, or a few options on this airframe that I decided not to get. In the back, there's a cross piece that goes across here, and you can get a rod bent in a U-shape welded onto this on both sides that hangs down, and that's you can get this on this kit, on this airframe when you buy it, but it's a F. Atlee Dodge modification, and it comes with anchor points down here on the floor for cargo net. Then there's also, you can also get a little hook that comes down off of either this bar or this cross diagonal bar for hooking your headsets on when you're not using them. Same with the front seat. That would be up there someplace. They seem like they'd be a good idea if you say it real fast, but I'm not real convinced that it is. To me, they're just stuff that's hanging down in there at about head level that you can crack your head on if you have some kind of an incident. You can turn a minor incident into a major accident by skewering your head or banging your head on one of those things. One of the other things that protrudes out into the cabin space is the headset jacks. On the other airframe, and a lot of them, they're just put right into this wing root panel, and then your headset jacks stick out. Well, they can be busted off. They kind of hang there and can be broken off if they're hit, or they're right about head level if something gets around and you start banging around in the airplane. And I don't like the idea of having a lot of stuff sticking out where you can get skewered on it. Like I said, you can turn a minor incident into a major accident. I flew an airplane one time, a Cub, that had the compass mounted up there on the dash panel in those diagonals that go down through there. Now, the idea behind that was a good idea, is to try to get the compass away from the electrical stuff and whatnot so it was read more accurately. But every time I flew that airplane, I looked at that compass and I could just see myself wandering around heaven or hell, whichever came to, with an imprint of a compass in my face. Now, one of the things that I did have added to the airframe was these tabs right here, and they're for seatbelt hookup. The normal seatbelt hookup on the Cub on the front seat, the seatbelt is just attached right to the seat. Well, if you look here, these are pretty flimsy seat attachments there. In the event of a sudden stoppage, just the weight of the pilot, especially somebody that's 280 pounds in there, in a sudden stoppage, the momentum is just going to rip that seat loose. So what I did on the other airframe is I cut out a section here of this floor on this cross piece that goes across. I put a piece of cable around it and then hooked it right into where the seatbelt attach was on there. But this is a better setup here because this comes down at an angle, so instead of being straight up, it comes down at an angle, and so it's got a little better chance of retention of that front seat. We'll see how it is with interfering with the back seat person's feet when we get it in there. And then, of course, the other thing that I added to the airframe were these attach points here for the shoulder harnesses. The one in the back, of course, it's completely out of the way, and then it's kind of covered up with this baggage compartment panel. This one here, there's a chance of hitting your head on it in case of getting banged around, but I'll put some foam or something on that. And I put foam on these cross pieces up here because my head has a tendency to bang into these. Now the X-brace is something that's added onto these too, because the original Cub just has one diagonal go across, and according to reports it has a tendency, if you tip it over and hit a wing or something like that and the wing folds up, this piece has a tendency to come right down and through the pilot's head. So that's why that extra X-brace is in there. That strengthens that cage up quite a bit there. So it's been quite a while since I've done any actual molding with this Kydex, any of the major stuff. I just did a little bit on those wing root fairings covers. Just didn't amount to much, just changing a little bit on them. You want to put the pockets in this Kydex in that one wing root panel for the headset jacks to fit into. And these are the headset jacks here. So I started working on a plan for that, measured out what the jacks themselves were, the receptacle portion of it, how much room they took up, and then these are the jacks that go into the headset. And I took some measurements on those, and I decided I wanted a pocket about a little over an inch deep and about a little over 2 inches wide. So that's kind of what I come up with. And then I didn't need the pocket to be totally recessed in there. It's actually better if it comes out at an angle. That way these jacks can go in there and you can pull them out. And then that takes them off from straight out, like they would have been straight out like this. Now this puts them in at an angle, so they're not quite flush, but almost flush with the panel there. Well, I cut out a little blank here for the mold to push in on that, rounded the corners off and stuff, and then glued it onto a block that I can use to push in, which will also stop when it gets down onto the Kydex itself, give me the right depth and everything. So then I started playing with this piece of scrap Kydex. I just used this hole to start with, and it was just too much. It was pushing down in and making a distorted pocket. It worked, but the pocket wasn't what I wanted. So I went ahead and cut out a piece in this MDF that's it's just bigger than this piece here. It gives me, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch on all the way around it, a little more, and that gives enough room for the Kydex to fit down into. And so then I was able to put this piece of Kydex down on top of that, and then I put some scrap pieces around and went ahead and pushed in, and that worked okay, but it still wasn't as good as what I wanted. So I took a second piece of MDF and I cut out a little, it's a bigger, heavier piece, so I cut out a bigger hole out of it, big enough for this whole thing to fit down into, and then that can sit on top of the Kydex piece and kind of hold everything down and protect the rest of the Kydex piece from the heat when I heat it up, and then push that in there. I heat it up with the heat gun. So that wound up working pretty not good, and I've just used one scrap piece of this Kydex on this, and that's kind of the nice thing about this stuff is I've heated this one and poked divots down into it about 4 or 5 times, and each time when I did, I would take it and turn it over a couple of times and just heat it back up and press it back down flat again with a piece of board. Just heat it up and take it out, and that's saved me from using up all the rest of my pieces. Alright, I'll get this all set up again now. We're going to go ahead and do this again. I took and drew some lines here projected out from the center of this hole, or from the edge of this hole, so I can kind of line this up. I want to start heating that up, and we got to keep this heat moving a little bit in here, because it doesn't take very much to scorch the face of that, and I want to slow the heat down enough and start getting heat in there, but I want to slow it down enough that it thoroughly penetrates both sides of that sheet of Kydex there. I want the heat to get all the way through it. Yeah, I can see it starting to work, so it's starting to get hot. I can push on it, and it's just a little bit soft. I turn that off, and that thing runs for a little while to cool it out. And put this form in there, press it down in there, and just hold it. Alright, that's cooled off enough that it's going to hold its shape. There's my second pocket. Okay, that's not too bad. Here's the phone jacks, mic jack, and I think that'll be pretty good like that. Well, I was hoping to keep this a little bit simpler, but after playing with it a little bit, I could see that that's not going to happen. This is the root cover here for the left-hand side. I was just thinking about bringing it over and kind of setting it on that relief hole that I'd made, and putting it up and putting someone on it for pressure and stuff, and just doing those pockets. But after playing with it a little bit, I could see that's not going to work. I've got a couple of bends on here. This bottom bend goes along that roof line, or the window channel, and goes up underneath it, and then the sliding window channel goes up on that and holds that in. And then of course I've got the top side here, goes over the top of that wing root, and it's just bent over it, and that's what holds it on. And then there's a bend here where it goes over that main structure. So I've got to make something to support the whole thing. I want that lip to hang over, and then I've got to have this cut off along here where this rib goes, or that main little stringer there goes. Well, I got these reliefs holes cut out for the in this blank in this back piece. This is be where the Kydex goes down in when I put that pocket in there. They're pretty rough now, so I'll go ahead and take a file and smooth these all out and get them all trued up, and then do just like I did with this piece that I was using to practice on. I'll go ahead and round those over just a little bit and smooth them out so it doesn't tear that. I had to quit for a little bit because my file, the handle kept coming off of it and was loose on there. It made it kind of difficult to work with. So I got some 5-minute epoxy out and mixed up, and then I mixed in a bunch of the sawdust that I was getting off of this stuff working on it, and filled in the hole in this handle and got it set in there now. And it took a little break, and this is set up pretty good in there now, so it'll be a lot easier to work with. I had a couple other files that had the same problem with, so I worked on them at the same time. Had a little bit of concern on these holes here. They're a little bit close here on the bottom, but this back one is close here on the top. I got to watch out on that pulling and creeping on there when I put that Kydex in there. But hopefully, if I put the top piece on and clamp it down tight, then hopefully I won't have any distortion in that panel. We'll see how it goes. I've got these pockets cleaned out, straightened out pretty good. Put those on, put this on there. Now, put that on like that. I'm going to put some sheet metal screws in here on this lip down here to hold it down. Yeah, I guess the time for procrastination is over. I've got this thing all set up. Got my cutout underneath. I put 2 shims underneath it to get it up high enough to go down all the way through for the pocket. I clamped down here in the front, but because it's kind of cantilevered out over there and that was pushing up, I went ahead and put another board on there and then stacked up some extra boards, UHMW, or not UHMW, MDF, stacked up on there to add some weight on that to kind of clamp that back down to hold this tight against there. And then because I've got a formed portion here that goes over that eyebrow, over that portion on the rib, and then it's bigger to allow all of that wiring and stuff to go through there. I just covered, I couldn't cover that with wood. The wood wouldn't fit over it. It would just flatten this all down if it did get warm. So I just went ahead and cut this off along the angle where that formed area is, and covered that with aluminum foil to help keep it from getting hot. So I guess we'll go ahead and give it a try. See what we can do here. I hope I don't screw this up too bad, because I'm not sure whether I've got enough to make another one of these or not. I think I've got just enough maybe to make one of these, but of the extra Kydex I've got left over. Well, let's see what we can do with that. I've got the back side of it there. Okay, there it is. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. Now we can take this one apart. See how bad it actually is. Okay. Oh yeah, that looked pretty good. That's nice. Okay, that's good. That's good. Now I get one more chance to screw it up here. Alright, I guess that looks pretty good. Now I want this to go this way. Alright, I'll give that a try. See what happens there. Okay, it's in there. Alright, that pocket's in there, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave this clamped down now to make sure this all cools off, because this is so thin here that it very well could get misshapen, could twist or something like it did on some of those practice pieces where I had narrow edges on there. This pocket done. Go ahead and I marked that out with a gold marker, magic marker, which works pretty good on this black, except it's a big white line, a big fat line. You have to use a lacquer thinner to get those marks off of there. So that's cleaned up. And that one looks pretty darn good. Okay, now this is the way that'll work. Right there. Those will go in just like that. Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty nice. Those will go in like that, and then that cable can come down and I can tie it off around that. I can do something anyway. It's not sticking out like it was before. Before it was back here and sticking out, and then all this cable was wrapped up around the X-brace on top and down, and it was always a pain. Okay, I think I did a good job on that. I was worried, well, it flattened out a little bit there. I was worried, it didn't do too bad. I was worried it was going to flatten out where this bar goes through here, or distort there on this edge, but it looks pretty darn good. Okay, there it is, all off of there. And yeah, it worked out pretty good. Clean this back side up, not that anybody will ever see it, but it doesn't matter that much. There it is. The back set can go in back here, and then the cables can come down around, and they don't come straight out into the head or get tangled, tangled up there.
Oh,
and the front set will come out and go forward. Or you can,
oh, nice.
So,
Very
That's it.
professional.
Yeah, it turned out good. I'll have to drill holes in here, but I can do all that later. When I get, ready to put it all together, I can
Yeah.
to mount the jacks,
You can get
the
'em in the right
sockets
spot.
in. Yeah, well, but
It's nice.
that's what I wanted to do there. That turned out pretty good.
Yeah, dude.
I'm happy. I'm happy.
Happy dance.
Well, there's the wing root mounted back up in the airframe where it goes. I don't have it tied down on the bottom yet, and I didn't put the plate back on it that has the fuel gauge numbers on it. But it went up in there and fits back up in there just like it's supposed to. Yeah, I got to say that went as well as I'd hoped and better than I expected. A lot of times when you go bend things and move things around in shapes, you stretch in metal here, you wind up shrinking it there, and I was afraid I was going to shrink that and distort that wing root panel out of shape, but it looks really good. It's the way it is there, so I'm happy with the way that turned out. Those pockets for the headset jacks are going to be real nice there. That's going to keep those headset jacks from sticking out so far into the cockpit area.